What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Joystick Ayrton. So we're going to divert away from the Windows-based handhelds, from the Steam Deck, the GPD devices, and we're going to talk about emulation for the first time on the channel. And we're going to talk about my experience with 1 month using the RG556 from Anbernic. So let's get started. On an incredibly quick side note, we're going to talk about the fact that I bought a new ROG Ally. Why? There is a lot going on in my head, in the channel, and all of that. So make sure you guys stay tuned. We're going to talk about what that means for the Lenovo Legion Go, what that means for the GPD Win Mini that is on the way, and all kinds of different stuff. So there's a lot of content coming to the channel, so make sure you guys hit that subscribe button to stay up to date with what we got going on. So now let's go ahead and roll on into the RG556. Okay, so this is the Anbernic RG556. This guy is awesome. It's anywhere from about $180 to $220, depending on the storage options and things of that nature. It comes with a 5.5-inch OLED screen, and it is awesome. It is incredibly light, around 400 grams, 350 to 400. I don't have a scale, but it is incredibly light, and it's one of the biggest reasons that I really haven't been touching the Legion Go, and why I got an ROG Ally is just how portable this is, how light it is, and how long the battery lasts. You can get 3 to 5 hours out of PS2 emulation or GameCube emulation, which is just awesome. So we're going to do this video a little bit different. If you wanted a setup guide, honestly, Retro Game Corp does such a good job with written and video setup guides for all of these different retro handhelds. I would be doing all of you a disservice not to be sending you that direction. So if this video explodes in any way, shape, or form, or maybe we go farther down the retro handhelds route in the future, maybe I'll do some written guides, or maybe I'll try to put a different spin on those videos, and maybe we'll do one for this in the near future just to kind of put it out there and see what you guys think. Because I have a couple good ideas for it, but if you want absolutely everything, he is the place to go. For this device, for the Retroid Pocket 4, for the Retro Pocket 4 Pro, the Odin 2, and so on and so forth. So I will link that video in the comments or in the description down below and the comment section down below. And I will also put a link to his written guide as well, because that is what I used to set up this device. This is my first emulation device. So with that being said, we're going to talk about what I use it for, my experience with it, and what I recommend you do. Okay, so my use case scenario, I think it's really unique, and that's honestly why I'm making this video. I'm not in the same generation as Retro Game Corp or the Nerd Nest, his hair's kind of gray, or the Phawx. They're a little bit older of a generation than I am. I'm only 28 years old. I was playing Xbox 360, PS2. Those are the consoles I grew up on. I played a very small amount of Nintendo 64. I played no NES. I played no PlayStation 1, none of the Atari systems. I played an incredibly small amount of GameCube. And so I'm using this in a completely different light than those guys. I purchased this thing specifically to emulate PS2, PS1 because I never played that system and I really want to play some of the games on it, and a little bit of GameCube because I didn't play very much of it, and I have a couple fond memories with a couple buddies back when I was in elementary school and very early on in middle school as well. So with that being said, this is going to be tailored towards my use case scenario. We'll talk a little bit about the things you can do it just in general compared to a couple other devices. So let's go ahead and roll on into it. Okay, so before we jump into the performance and everything, I want to talk about the other devices that you could have picked besides the RG556 from Anbernic. This is my first device. I spent an incredible amount of time researching them, watching Retro Game Corp, and just really thinking, what am I going to be doing? What do I want to spend? PS2 emulation is all day long exactly what I wanted to be doing. I wanted some high battery life. This has great battery life, and it will do 85% of PS2 games. $180 to $200, give or take, shipping and fees. With that being said, there's a few other good choices. You have the Retroid Pocket devices from the 3rd generation, but you also have the ones from the 4th generation. The Retroid Pocket 4 is $150. It'll play about 75% of PS2 games, where this guy will play like 85 to 90% of them with no issues. It's a little bit cheaper than this one. You have the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro. That's $200, and it will outperform this guy. It is better. It will play most PS2 games at a 2x resolution. This is more like a 1 to 2, depending on the title, variable, and there's going to be some games that it won't play. We'll talk about that later. Those are all within this price bracket. You can start to blow it out of the water. The Odin 2 is an incredible device. It will upscale almost any PS2 game to 4 or 6 times or 8 times, depending on the title. It's an awesome device. but it's $300. I'll put a link to the video that Retro Game Corps has of it in the description down below, because if you're just want an emulation device and you don't care about the price and you don't really want a Steam Deck because you want something really small and ergonomic and light, man, that is the one to get. But you're starting to get really close to the price of an LCD screen or Steam Deck. And if you spend a little bit more than that, you could get an OLED deck. And it can do a lot more than these Android-based handhelds. So you really kind of got to decide, okay, this is what I want to spend. This is what I want to play. If you don't want to play anything, you don't want to play PS2, you don't want to play GameCube, you want to play back from that, you do not need to spend $160. You can do it on a much cheaper device. So keep that in mind. But you can get crazy. You can spend $450, $500 to do this. Keep that in mind. You can do it with a Lenovo Legion Go. You can do it with a ROG Ally. I personally wanted a completely separate device. I wanted something where I could just have a unique experience inside of its own environment, not messing with Windows and having to deal with it, and something light, ergonomic, and really good battery life. So I only put PS2 games on here. Not only did I only put PS2 games on here, I didn't bother to set this thing up like Retro Game Corps did. I followed his guide, but I didn't go in and put a front end in and do all of the extra stuff to make it feel like a console. You can do that, and it's awesome. And I'm going to do that at some point in time, but I reset it, deleted all the emulators that they pre-installed on it, deleted all of the games they put on it. I put the Nether SX2 emulator on here, the BIOS files, and I took a 512 SD card and covered it in PS2 games. I'm going to do PS1, I'm going to do PSP, and I'm going to do a little bit of GameCube as well. And that's where I'm going to end my emulation, because I don't really care to play any other systems. I'm not a crazy Nintendo person, but we are going to talk about most of the emulators' performance later on in the video. So with that being said, there's not a 100% this game works kind of deal. I looked for it. I looked through different videos. I looked through different Google Drive files. I could not 100% know all of these games I care about are going to work. There's just not a pool that big of people playing all the titles that I cared about. So with that being said, we're going to run through some of the games that I had, show you the performance on it, talk about the other emulators that run well on it, and move on from there. Okay, so this is the performance section of the RG556. What I want you to keep in mind, we're not going nearly as in-depth of Retro Game Corps. So any emulator of any game that is pre-PS2 and GameCube, any of them, play flawlessly. At a 1x resolution all the way up to a 4x resolution, you're not going to have any issues playing any of those ROMs that you have. So if you are considering anything below a PS2 and a GameCube, this thing's going to be flawless. Not only is it going to be flawless, you're going to get 5 to 6 hours of battery life, an OLED screen, great ergonomics, outside of the fact that the plastic is a little slippery, and it's going to perform flawlessly. So if you're thinking about that stuff, $180, and this thing is awesome. There's only one caveat, and that's the joysticks. We'll talk about that later. The D-pad's pretty fine. The triggers are pretty much fine, and so are the bumpers. So with that being said, PS2 is where all of this mattered to me. So we're going to jump in and talk about the library that we had. So I'm going to go ahead and boot up Nether SX. And like I said, I loaded this thing down. I have a 512 gig SD card in here, and it is packed full. So I downloaded all the James Bond games. All of them run flawlessly with no issues. But one game that was really close to my heart back playing the original Xbox was Area 51. It runs really good on here. The only big issue with it is inverted controls back in the day, and you cannot invert them. I downloaded a bunch of Armored Core games all the way up to Armored Core 3. Armored Core 3 here playing flawlessly. It's kind of incredible. No issues there at all. The Brothers in Arms games. The Call of Duty games all the way up to Call of Duty 3. And here's the unfortunate part about Call of Duty 3. It does not play. It is not a title that we're going to be able to work in any way, shape, or form. All of these other titles we've been talking about so far have been playing at a 1x resolution. Sometimes I'll boost a 1.5. In a really light title, I can do 2, but 2 starts to get wonky, so I try to keep it between 1 and 1.5, but usually I just leave it at 1. The native resolution, it looks incredible on this OLED screen, and not only that, but That is the authentic resolution. So if you're really looking for an authentic play, that's where you're going to get it. So I then had the conflict games of Desert Storm 2, Back to Baghdad, and Conflict Vietnam. They both, all three of them, played flawlessly. I don't know if you guys remember Def Jam to New York, but that played great as well, as did Def Jam Vendetta. ESPN NFL 2K5, by far the best football game ever, works flawlessly. I don't need Madden. It's a giant heap of shit. 2K5 is where it is at. Gladius, I don't know if any of you guys remember Gladius. That is a game I looked so far and wide to see if it was playable. It works awesome, as does Goblin Commander Unleash the Horde. Surprisingly, God of War and God of War 2 are awesome. They perform great. I was really surprised. I had no issue at 1X. I had little slowdowns here and there, but nothing that I was not willing to work with. Grand Theft Auto 3 plays well, as does Half-Life. I downloaded all of the Harry Potter games from back in the day. I've only played the first one just a little bit, but they've played really well. Now, the games that really did this system for me. All of the Lord of the Rings games. So Lord of the Rings, the prelude to Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, King Arthur, Aragorn's Quest, had the Fellowship of the Ring, the Two Towers, the Return of the King. I have spent so much time this last month and a half playing those games. All of them perform perfectly at a 2x resolution 90% of the time. Sometimes I have to lower it a little bit, but it is a flawless experience on this device. It brings me an incredible amount of joy. I race dirt bikes. I'm a big fan in off-road. All of the early PS2 games, or any of the PS2 off-road games like MX Rider, MX Superfly, MX 2002 featuring Ricky Carmichael, they're all great. They all perform flawlessly. I had a very mixed reaction for the most part with the Medal of Honor games. They were a little tough for me to play, to get to work at all, so a little hit and miss there. But the last couple of games that I really cared about were Mercenaries Playground of Destruction, which performed great in most scenarios, had a couple areas with some slowdowns, and Mercenaries 2 World in Flames, which played about 80% of the time was really good, and then sometimes it just had some wonky moments. Let's talk about some games that didn't work. NCAA football, any one of them, didn't work. Any Madden, didn't work. Had incredible issues with the NASCAR games, Total Team Control, 2005. So there are games that won't work. Resident Evil 4 played well. All the Quake games played well. The Silent Hill games played really well. And all the Star Wars games also played really well. The only Star Wars games that I had a little bit of slowdown with was Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. Plays really good 90% of the time. Just had some really weird little slowdowns during some cutscenes. But for the most part, it played the most part of that entire category. 90%, 95% of it was all flawless playing for 4 to 6 hours of gameplay. So now I'm going to talk about the couple of things I don't like about the device. Okay, so I feel like this video has dragged on a lot. I talked way too long in all the games I was playing and the performance and everything. So hopefully I'll chop that up a little bit. But hands down, the absolute worst thing about this device are the joysticks. I don't know what Anbernic was thinking when they put these in here, but they're terrible. So basically the way these joysticks work is they don't really go in a circular motion. I'm going to try and get an up close of that. What they do is they ding to a direction. So instead of doing like a full fluid motion, 360 degrees, they'll jump 90 degrees. So they'll either point directly north, or maybe you're trying to go southwest, they'll go directly south or directly west or directly east. So terrible experience in most first-person shooters or driving games. So what we did is we got the goalie kit switch replacement. These are Hall Effect sticks. They're $20 on Amazon. Super easy install. We're going to show that later on the channel in a different video, but world of difference. I mean, that takes this device from being, yeah, it's a really good device, but it's got some problems, to, yeah, this is hands down my favorite. I feel like I made a really good choice. There's only one other issue, and I would really like Anbernic to get off their ass and fix it. Anytime you restart the system, it will go between 2 different controller modes. So it is set up like a Nintendo Switch layout with the X, the B, the A, and the Y. You can toggle that between Nintendo Switch and you can toggle that between Xbox. I'm constantly in Xbox mode playing PS2 games. But if I restart the device, it automatically boots into Switch mode and you have to toggle it back. Even if it says Xbox mode is toggled, it won't be in Xbox mode. You'll have to switch it to Switch and switch it back to Xbox to get it to actually function where the bottom button is A. So those are two really small things. I could care less about the software. I'm really kind of expecting these Retroid, cheaper handhelds to be janky in some way, shape, or form. It's really disappointing that Anbernic picked incredibly crappy joysticks, but at least we can solve that issue. And I love the thing. I personally would not want to have my ROMs on a Windows-based handheld. I'm going to try it on the Win Mini when I get it, but that's because it should be able to play Xbox, Xbox 360, and PS3, so I cannot freaking wait for that. But when it comes to playing retro games, PS2, GameCube, this thing is awesome. I couldn't recommend it anymore. If you pick it up, get you some Hall Effect sticks from Gully Kit. They're on Amazon. I'll link them in the description down below. It is an awesome, awesome upgrade for this thing. With that being said, thank you guys for watching. If you are interested in more retro content, maybe that's on the Legion or on the Ally or whatever it may be, or you think we should do a full guide on setting this up, let us know in the comment section down below. You kind of got to dance around the ROMs ordeal and about emulation and things of that nature in general. So we're going to try and do our best little shuffle or dance, so to speak, and see how that all lands. But with that being said, let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below on the video, the channel, the RG556, emulation in general. I cannot wait to hear all of your opinions. If this video takes off in any way, shape, or form, I mean 500 views, 1,000 views, we'll probably spend more time looking at retro games, retro handhelds, guides. I would really like to do a website in some way, shape, or form like Retro Game Corp's that kind of, he does things in such a detailed, incredible way about everything. I want to give you like a 5-sentence, super quick, here's 5 minutes on how to set this thing up. Step 1, skip all this other shenanigans. Step 2, you're done. Because that's kind of what I did with his guide. I took his guide, chopped out everything I didn't care about, and here we go. So with that being said, thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it. We're almost at 1,000 subscribers. We're growing. The channel's growing. I'm learning a lot about all of these different devices and having a really good time. And I hope you guys are enjoying the content. And I will see you in the next one.